Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome all members and guests to the June 4th, 2024 Public Hearing Committee meeting and remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised. So if you could take a second to ensure that your phones are on silent, that would be great. For those in attendance virtually, please mute yourself when not speaking. When called upon to speak, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself. And staff in attendance, remember to use the Microsoft Teams hand raise feature. And with that, I will call the June 4th, 2024 Public Hearing Committee meeting to order. Roll call. All members of council, with the exception of Councillor Huffman, are present today. Councillor Huffman's out of town at a conference. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Michele, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All in favor? Carried. I'll now officially open the public meeting held under the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, and county policies. Please be advised to preserve your right to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. You're required to make comments or provide written submissions prior to the passage of a bylaw. These meetings are held today to allow the public to provide initial comments on the presented planning matters. Our first report is CD 24055, which is 1601 Old Brock Street. Mr. Sloan.
Thank you and good afternoon. So the first item, first development application, I believe we have Ms. Yager is online to provide the overview for the development application. Turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brandon. Through you, Madam Mayor, an application has been received to amend the zoning bylaw on a parcel with address 1601 Old Brock Road. Next slide, please. The lands are approximately 3.3 acres within the hamlet of Victoria. The immediate surrounding land uses are predominantly residential, with natural heritage features to the east and agricultural lands outside of the hamlet. Next slide, please. The subject lands are designated hamlet, and the lands proposed to be retained are designated hamlet, hazard land, and provincially significant wetland, and there's also an overlay of significant woodlands to the north and east. Next slide, please. The proposal today is to rezone portions of the subject lands from agricultural to hamlet residential with a special provision to permit reduced lot area of 0.31 hectares, where 0.4 hectares is the required minimum. This application will facilitate a severance of a single residential lot and retain an existing single detached dwelling with an accessory structure, two accessory structures. In addition to the future single lot severance, this application will also bring the subject lands into conformity with the underlying hamlet designation in the official plan. Next slide, please. Submitted as supporting documents are the following: a hydrogeological report, a planning justification report, and archaeological screening criteria. No technical concerns were identified by county staff to date, noting additional review and conditions will be applied to the consent application. One comment was received by a member of the public yesterday, and I believe Mr. Brandt is here in chambers to distribute a printed copy of that comment on my behalf. So thank you to you, Mr. Brandt. Their comment flags a concern with groundwater availability over the long term due to future works proposed on Mill Pond, also known as the Victoria Dam. While no technical concerns were identified by department staff when this application and its associated hydrogeological report were circulated, I have forwarded this comment to the engineering department. At a high level, my understanding is that there is a project being undertaken by the LPRCA to evaluate options to address the existing dam's health, with many of those options reflecting an approach to decommission the dam. I also understand that the LPRCA is committed to a well monitoring program during the drawdown of the Mill Pond. Next slide, please. Some preliminary considerations associated with this application are natural heritage, housing, agricultural lands, parking, and servicing. Next slide, please. Next up for staff are the consideration of feedback received at this public hearing meeting, the review of technical and resident comments, and preparation of a recommendation report. Thank you all for your time, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Questions of committee? Okay, seeing none, we have one registered speaker today, Mary Elder. Come on up. Just a reminder, you have 5 minutes. You can start whenever you're ready.
There. So Mary Elder of Elder Plans, representative for Bill and Heather Lawrence. The proposed lot that they wish to put in this would be considered an infilling lot within the hamlet of Victoria. So very much in line with Provincial Planning Act, Provincial Policy Statement, and our official plan. The only thing that they cannot do is get the right size that's required in the zoning bylaw. So the hydrogeological study says that the 0.31 hectare lot size would be acceptable, that water and sewer can be done in private servicing. I took a look at the hydrogeological study and noted that the expected well in liters, what it will produce is almost double what's normally required for a single-family dwelling. So I think that kind of addresses some of the questions in the submitted comments. And with that, I would recommend that county staff, county council approve this application as it is good planning and is in the public interest. If you have any other questions, please let me know.
Thanks, Mary. Are there any questions from committee to Mary? Okay, thanks for joining us. Is there anyone in council chambers that wishes to speak to this report? Is there anyone on the line that wishes to speak to this report? Yep, go ahead. Come on up to the podium. There's a little button on the right-hand side there. If you'd state your name and address for the public record. You have 5 minutes. Yeah, perfect.
Hello, my name's Andrew Harper. I live just to the west of this address. I'm the adjoining property to it. I just had a couple concerns about the rezoning. So I run a small business from next door. I don't run it out of next door. I have a tree removal business, and that's how I feed my family. So part of the purpose of me purchasing that land, one of the drawing cards was the fact that I was zoned agriculture. So I guess I wonder what that means to my zoning. There's been issues in the past with this neighbor, and I'm just concerned that it might be a way of getting around circumstances with me. My other concern is my well. They put a tile bed next door. How does their tile bed correspond with my well? I guess would be it for me.
All right, thank you very much. I'm not sure if staff has any comments on that, but typically what happens is they'll build it into a staff report, and then we'll bring the staff report back to a public meeting for us to make a decision on. So no decision will be made today. Staff, do you have any comments you want to provide, or you'll come back in a staff report?
To Madam Mayor, we'll look at that, and I'm sure that building will provide comments as well. And regarding the well, I mean, there are certain setback requirements from septic beds, so we'll look at that, and during the building permit stage, that will be looked after further.
Okay. Is that okay, Brandon? You're good? Okay. Councillor Brunton?
Thank you, Mayor Martin. No, I didn't quite understand the gentleman. I had a question about his well. How deep's your well? Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure. It's a dug well.
Sorry, would you mind coming back up and just use the microphone for the public record? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. The well next to me, most wells in Victoria are just, well, from what I know, little dug wells. They're not very deep at all. My well is probably 12 feet from his property line, probably not far from where the house would be or the dwelling that they're building.
Is there a well on that property now next door?
There's nothing next door that I'm aware of, no.
Have you any idea, like, have you talked to do you know if he's gonna put a tile bed?
Well, there's been some issues in the past between him and I, multiple calls to bylaw and all this kind of stuff that hasn't really amounted to anything, and it just, no, we don't get along, him and I, so.
I just wondered if you knew anything about where he was planning to put his tile bed.
I had no idea. I have no idea what's going up for a house or single dwelling or anything about it, so.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Van Passen.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Not a question, but I think that's the kind of thing that could probably be explained in the staff report. There are standards from the Ministry of Environment on how far a septic bed has to be from a well and how far a well has to be from a septic bed, and believe it or not, they're not necessarily the same. But all those things, but that doesn't come at the planning stage, that would come at the building permit stage. So again, maybe if staff can throw a couple lines in there with a better explanation to alleviate these fears. As I said, it's not part of the planning process, part of the building process, and there are protections in place for that. So you can ask staff to look at that. So.
Okay, thanks for coming, Andrew. So we'll have another staff report, and staff can provide comments on the future. No decisions being made today, but your comments are on the public record.
Thank you.
Thanks. Final call from committee members. Any questions, comments? Okay, there's a staff recommendation before us to receive the report as information, and that comments received as part of the statutory public meeting be considered in a future recommendation staff report. Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Vanendrishi. All in favor? Carried. CD 24039, which is 436 Front Road. Mr. Sloan.
Yes, thanks. And back over to Ms. Yeager to introduce this item about the BB Ranch file.
Thank you, Brandon. So through you, Madam Mayor, the application for council's review today is for a vacant land condominium. Next slide, please. The subject property is a privately serviced lot with civic address 436 Front Road. There is a single detached dwelling and agricultural buildings on the property, and the primary agricultural use are cash crops and a horse ranch. Next slide, please. The subject lands are designated and zoned agricultural and hazard land with an overlay of significant woodlands. On the southern portion of the property is an archaeological feature, and the lands abut the Lake Erie shoreline to the south, which is identified as a provincially significant wetland. The area of development will exclusively occur on the lands designated agricultural. The surrounding lands are primarily agricultural with limited residential lots to the southwest. Next slide, please. For council's understanding, this site has been subject of recent previous planning applications. So first, a joint official plan and zoning bylaw amendment files, OPNPL 2020-234 and ZMPL 2020-235, which were approved in order to permit several proposed uses. And these include farm dwelling units in the form of single detached dwellings with separate ownership, the total number to be determined upon receipt of required technical reports, and on-farm diversified uses, which include tourist cabins or inns, a saloon with food and beverage services, and a multi-purpose riding arena and conference center. Both the farm dwelling units and the various on-farm diversified uses are stated in the bylaw to be within a resort-oriented condominium, which are defined in the bylaw as a single property which is comprised of multiple farm dwelling units with shared common elements, including related farm uses of the farm operation, and various on-farm diversified uses managed and maintained by a condominium corporation. Additionally, a minor site plan amendment is currently being reviewed by staff. Due to this amendment and technical feedback by staff, the planning department anticipates there may be future changes to the final condominium plans. So as noted earlier, the application for council's review today is for the vacant land condominium. The draft plan attached to my report consists of the following units identified on the plans. So 30 farm dwelling units in the form of single detached dwellings, 8 tourist cabins, 1 saloon or restaurant, 1 existing barn, an archaeological avoidance and protection area, crop or pasture land for farm uses, a private road, and the widening of Front Road. Next slide, please. Due to the range of technical requirements previously submitted for the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and site plan, the submission for this application are the condominium reference plans, and no public feedback has been received to date. Next slide, please. As part of the initial circulation of the condo plans and prior to the amended site plan application, planning staff provided and received the following key comments. The building department identified that a hydrological study, D54 report, and amendments to the functional servicing report would be required to determine whether the proposed units and on-farm diversified uses could support the required private services, or could be supported by the private services. Both the zoning and planning departments sought clarity on location of identified land uses, conformity to the zoning bylaw, and provincial requirements such as the Minimum Distance Separation and Nutrient Management Act. Fire department provided an informational comment on fire code requirements for the proposed road. Similarly, the bylaw enforcement department provided a reminder on enforcement responsibilities for parking and safety concerns for the proposed access from Front Road. And lastly, the development engineering department noted that no comments or concerns have been identified as it pertains to the vacant land use condo proposal. Should a revised site plan be submitted, a review will be completed to ensure engineering matters addressed through the initial site plan conditional approval continue to be addressed. Next slide, please. Some preliminary considerations for this application include roads, housing, jobs and employment, agriculture, and servicing. Next slide. So next steps are that planning staff will provide a consolidation of new comments for the amended site plan to the applicant, which may require revised reference plans for the condominium. Additionally, planning staff will work on the recommendation report and finalize the conditions of approval for the condominium. I would like to take this opportunity at the end of my presentation to thank the property owner and agent for their continued collaboration with staff and hard work on this unique project. Thank you all for your time. I am available for questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And my first question is with respect to, there's a municipal water line runs from Port Rowan to St. Williams. Would the particular project tie into that municipal water line, or would it be on separate wells?
Thank you for your question. Through you, my understanding is it would not be tied in, but I do see that Darnell is here to provide any further technical feedback. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor's question. The St. Williams water line, or sorry, the Port Rowan water line that actually runs from Port Rowan to St. Williams that provides a service to this property actually has a restriction on it that only allows for the current single house use. So that will be what is permitted to continue, and all the other proposed condominium units here will be from a private well system.
Okay, thank you for that. And the MDS formula, there's horses on this particular property with 40 residences. How does the MDS formula apply to this particular project?
Thank you for your comment. Through you, Madam Mayor. So there's kind of two sides to MDS at a high level. There's MDS 1 and MDS 2. The important distinction from the planning side is that the condo is understood to be a single lot. So the presence of horses wouldn't trigger MDS for the proposed units. There's a requirement for livestock outside of the lot to ensure that that's in compliance. And that's been evaluated as part of the initial submission. And then in the future, if any livestock facilities are proposed to be constructed, say an expansion to the existing barn or new structures to house future horses, then at that time MDS will be triggered through the building permit process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one. I'm just hoping you can provide some clarity. What was your comment that you made about the on-farm diversified uses and the condo plan? Or maybe I misunderstood.
So there was a comment provided by the planning department as well as the zoning department, just seeking clarity on the location of the various identified land uses and essentially where they would be located on the plan. So when we look at the official plan and the zoning bylaw, what we're often tasked with doing is ensuring that the intent of the language of those bylaws as they were approved by council are reflected in the condo plan. So my understanding through the bylaw is that they identify on-farm diversified uses as common elements, and that's something that we're seeking clarity on and ensuring that that intent is met with the final condo plan. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, I just have never heard, I'm not familiar of any on-farm diversified uses on a condo plan.
Yeah, through the chair, that is part of the overall use of the site. So as part of the land use, there were some on-farm diversified uses. It is a little bit different to have that as part of this kind of form of tenure, we'll call it, to implement this. But the intent was that those on-farm diversified uses were for the use of multiple occupants of the site. And so as Ms. Yeager mentioned, it's just important to make sure that where those are located are actually in the common element, and those common elements are what we registered to the subsequent occupants attaching to.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Councillor Michele.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Hannelore, but Hannelore, I think you're probably going to defer this to Darnell. Can you comment on the widening of Front Road, please?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I would like to defer to Darnell.
Okay. Through you, Madam Chair, I believe there is a small road widening required in here. That'll be a condition of the site plan approval. Not quite sure on the actual distance, but I can certainly look it up and provide that back to you separately.
Thank you, Darnell.
Councillor Van Andriesch.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I have a question. The actual condos themselves, now I don't know if I misheard this or not, but the condos can be owned or purchased, but the land remains as something, I've seen this in other parks, where they lease the land from you so that you own are they going to own the land as well as the condo on the property? So the small on the big is what the plan is. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we have one registered speaker for this item. Eldon, come on up. You have 5 minutes, and you have a presentation? Okay.
I'll probably get you to skip through it quickly because Ms. Yeager had covered many of the speaking points. So thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for allowing me to speak today. This is the condominium component, draft plan of condominium component for BB Ranch Equestrian Resort. Next slide. I'm here on behalf of G. Douglas Valley Limited. My name is Eldon Darbus, and I'm a registered professional planner with the company. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Bauk and his family, who are the owners of the property. Next slide, please. So just as mentioned, the location of this property is 436 Front Road in St. Williams. It's on the Yes Bend between Booth's Harbor and Port Rowan on the northwest side of Lake Erie. There's 40 units. Ms. Yeager had identified what those units are for, including some common elements. Next slide, please. Very good. So this BB Ranch, just to recap, so BB Ranch, the resort concept is it's an equestrian resort. It's for families, couples, corporate groups. It's a destination for people who wish to live and vacation with their horses. This resort will include tourist accommodations, homes for families to construct and offer for vacation rentals. There's a saloon, which is the resort restaurant. This restaurant will showcase dishes from the local area, locally sourced food and beverages. And it's nestled in a cove of protected forest with a beautiful view of the shoreline. Next slide, please. So we've gone through an approvals process, quite extensive. It's a complex process. So starting back in 2020, there was the vision for the equestrian resort condominium, and it went from an idea to an application. Council passed the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments in August of 2021, and in May of 2022, there was an application for site plan. And now we're finally into getting the draft plan of condominium before council today. So 2 years after the conditional approval of the site plan was provided, we are moving forward with staff right now. As Ms. Yeager had mentioned, there's a handful of questions. We want to make sure that there's alliances with the bylaw. before they can offer final approval for the site plan. So staff have been very helpful. We do note, though, that the comments in the information report this evening were the original comments. We've been working with staff since then, and we've addressed, I believe, all of them except for the D54 study, which is nearly complete, and we'll be getting that to staff shortly. But we need to, our main thing is right now is we need a site plan agreement registered on title, and that followed by the condominium approval so that we can get shovels in the ground. Next slide, please. So just to close, so BB Ranch, it's exciting, it's a unique concept in Norfolk County. It's an innovative resort-oriented project that caters to tourism. It is a complex application with many moving parts, but we do have support from staff, and it complies with policy. It provides much needed roofed accommodation to the catering to the tourism industry. The concept itself prides itself on the use of local produce and meat and fish and beverage products. And it's taken, we're at, year 4 now. So this is a concept that's nearing the end, which we're very thankful for. And we're asking council have a favorable decision for the condominium. So thank you very much. That
Thanks for coming. Are there any questions from committee to Eldon? Councillor Columbus.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And Eldon, you're looking to put 40 units in there. Is this going to be phased in, or is it 40 units right off the bat?
That depends on sale, honestly. So all the construction related to the site plan, roads and hydro and all those kinds of things are going to be put in. We do have a builder lined up who is ready to start building some of the houses. I don't think all 40 is going to go in right away. It's going to be in process, but we're not phasing it. It's just first come, first serve.
Okay, and it might be in the report. Is it a central waste management system, or is it?
No. Each. This is what that study, the outstanding studies to determine, is to ensure that waste can be handled privately on each individual unit.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Michele.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure this question or maybe a comment, but at the beginning of the previous term of council, we placed a great deal of emphasis on the concept of agritourism, and I think, Mr. Darbison, if you just wanted to comment, I think this fits perfectly in checking off every box that I think we had in mind at that time.
Yes, absolutely. That's the vision from 4 years ago. This is the realization of that vision right now. So it is an equestrian resort. People get to live and vacation with their horses. That's exactly what's happening. And I mean, there's a lot of agriculture here. So bringing in locally sourced food and beverages is part of that concept plan. So absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. Is there anyone here in council chambers that wishes to speak? Is there anyone on the line that wishes to speak? And final call. Okay, staff recommendation is before committee to Councillor Van Passen. Moved, seconded by Councillor Michele. All in favor? That is carried to receive the report as information, and part of the statutory public meeting comments are received and considered in a future staff recommendation. Item 4.3 is CD 24059 94 Sovereign Street.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Sarah, turn it over to Mr. Sarah for the next application in Waterford.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So through the chair, I've prepared the following information report for you. So the subject property that we'll be discussing is located at 94 Sovereign Street in the city of Waterford. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the site. It's just over a 1/10 of an acre. It's located near the intersection of John Street and Sovereign Street in Waterford. It's currently surrounded by primarily residential land uses, which consists of a variety of single detached as well as higher density uses such as triplexes and fourplexes within the area. Next slide. Currently, in the official plan, the property is designated urban residential and is currently zoned urban residential type 1, so R1, in the Norfolk County zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this application is essentially an upzoning from R1 to R2 in order to facilitate the development of a semi-detached dwelling. The applicant requires two components of the bylaw to be amended. Those two components are the first one is for the minimum lot frontage for each respective lot. So there's about just under a 1 meter deficiency on the lot frontage per each respective dwelling. And then the other provision that would require an amendment would be the interior side lot line for the deck in the rear yard. It's proposed a 0.76 meter setback, and it's deficient 0.44 meters where the 1.2 meters is required. Next slide, please. So as part of the application, a site plan drawing was received. Comments of interest include, that's an error on my part. The comments of interest at this point in time are from development engineering only. Zoning, no comments. Comments have been received from zoning, but nothing of concern, just restating the deficiencies that are being applied for. So in addition to this, for this application, no public input has been received at the time of the application, at the time of this report being put forward. Next slide, please. And the key preliminary considerations for this site are it would be contributing to the housing supply within the urban area of Waterford. And in terms of parking, the proposed development meets the requirements laid out in the zoning bylaws as it pertains to parking. Staff would be providing council with a recommendation report at the subsequent council meeting, and that essentially concludes staff's presentation at this time.
Thanks. Any questions, committee members to staff? Okay, not seeing any hands. Make sure I'm on the right spot here. We don't have any registered, do we? I don't have any registered speakers. So is there anyone here in council chambers that wishes to speak to this? Is there anyone on the line that wishes to speak to this report?
It's Bob Phillips from J.H. Cahoon Engineering Limited. I'm here to answer any questions that the committee may have with respect to this application.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Not seeing any, so would you like to? Sure, come on up to the podium, please. The microphone's already ready and turned on, so if you could state your name and your address for the public record. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready to begin.
Okay, I was notified of this, I would assume, a month ago. Huh? Oh, I'm Linda Perkins. Okay, we live on Mechanic Street, and anyway, we went over on Sovereign and took a look at what was going on there, eh? And a couple of the residents come out and made comment that they didn't want this here big house in regular single-family homes, right? And so anyway, I didn't know anything about it, so I called into the planning, finally got through to them. And for some reason, I'm the only one that came in, and they were all interested in it, but how come nobody else came, you know? I'm thinking maybe I was the only one because I moved off, right? So, yeah, it has to do with the changing of from type 1 to type 2. Does that mean everybody in that area, of that ward, our taxes are going to go up and that? What's it mean? I don't know anything. This is my first time ever even dealing with this.
Well, welcome. If you have a bunch of questions, just send them to us. Just read them off to us right now. We'll answer your questions when your time is up.
I don't have any questions.
That's your only one?
I just want to know why this is happening. And
So the request is for the property owner to have a higher density on that particular piece of property. So
Yes.
instead of R1, it's going to, they're asking for it to go to R2, and that is what council ultimately will be making a decision on. And those changes impact that property specifically only.
They're not going to affect me on Mechanic Street?
No, you've just received notification because you're in close proximity to the changes.
Oh, okay.
But no changes to your property.
Oh, okay, that's what me and the other half wanted to know, right?
Nope, that's great. You don't know unless you ask. Thanks for coming
okay.
today. And
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Councillor Columbus.
Madam Mayor, do we know whether these are two-story dwellings or single-story?
Through you, Madam Mayor, they're two-storied.
And is the surrounding homes in the neighborhood, are they basically two stories as well, or one story?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So when I did my site visit, got to be honest, it was about a month ago, I saw a variety of different heights, different styles of homes, different, not just styles, but different years, and what you could tell they're different styles of design. So there's quite there's different.
Okay, quite a mix of housing.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Van Passen.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And through you to staff, just make sure I got this straight. What their specific request is to go to an R2 because they want to build a semi-detached, which is one of those houses that looks like one house, but it's actually two, but you can't tell when you drive by, right? That because they join at the property line, and that's why you need the R2 zoning. Is that correct?
Through Madam Mayor, so yes, the proposal is for R2, which is a semi-detached dwelling. I mean, one of the permitted use are semi-detached dwelling units, and you're right. It will probably look one house, but they have two dwelling units with separate entrance, and potentially two separate driveways.
Great question. Okay, we have a staff recommendation before us to receive the report as information and that comments received as part of the statutory public meeting be considered in a future recommendation staff report. Moved by Councillor Brunton, seconded by Councillor Van Passen. All in favor? Carried. And the last item on today's very big agenda is CS 24076, proposed closure and conveyance Livery Lane, Plan 436. Ms. Van Dyke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe Ms. Derbyshire is in council chambers today, and she's going to be presenting this report.
Thank you, Ms. Van Dyke. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council. Report CS 24-076 is being presented to the Public Hearings Committee for information purposes to allow the public an opportunity to express concerns, comments, objections, or support with regards to the request by the applicants for the permanent closure and conveyance of Livery Lane, Plan 436, Norfolk County, adjacent to their properties. The report provides the nature of the request by the applicants, along with additional related details. Realty staff did not receive any public input with regards to the proposed street closure. A further report will be presented to council at a later date for the purposes of a decision. Staff are here today to hear from the public and to answer any questions council members and the public may have related to the requested road closure. Thank you, and staff will take any questions at this time.
Thank you. Questions of committee to staff? Councillor Michelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question about the way we're going to come up to a valuation on this possible conveyance. Staff, we're seeking a narrative appraisal report for the lands. Would you be able to just, review with me and refresh my memory about what that is?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. We are seeking an appraisal report on this property due to the unique nature of the location of the property. It is close to the water's edge with surrounding businesses. So instead of going with our usual valuation, our policy states that we are able to seek an appraisal from a certified appraiser to get a valuation based on the market value at the time for this property.
Thank you, Kelly.
Any other questions? Councillor Banadrishi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. When we're looking at appraisals, do you look at, say, for instance, you'll talk to someone for the appraisal, but do you take a look at if there's been properties in the area that have been sold, and lots have been sold in the area, to come up, just kind of give you a ballpark price?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. Yes, we do take note of the surrounding lands. The appraiser bases her or his appraisal on surrounding lands and other properties that have been sold in the area within a certain time frame. So they do take that into consideration. Road allowances are somewhat of a unique nature, as they are just that, they're road allowances. So oftentimes other comparables are different road allowances as well.
And consideration that we're on the water here, so
right.
It in my mind, depending what you can, the size of it, and telling me so many meters doesn't, I can't visualize that very well. But anyway, it looks to me like you could actually put a home on there, and am I correct in saying that?
Through the mayor, with these road allowances, our policy states that we are required to merge them with the adjacent property owner's lands. So it is not intended to create a separate lot. So that would not allow them to, sell in the future or build a residence on the lot. It is intended to be merged with their existing properties.
So going this way, like you're going to hopefully split it, and this has value to the neighbors. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Van Passen.
Just a comment. Luckily, there's only one neighbor. The same people own everything around it, right? So that gives them some options.
Councillor Michelli.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess just following up with Councillor Van Passen's point, I guess I'd just ask Kelly, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but with that in mind, would you say that this might be one of the more straightforward conveyances we've had?
Through you, Madam Mayor. This could be a very straightforward conveyance, yes. I don't see any major red flags here, and we will make sure that it does merge with the existing parcels there so that it will create one larger lot for them.
My only comment is just that I did speak with one of the interested parties to purchase. Well, they're the same party, but there are two of them, and they were not aware that this was being added to the agenda as an addendum item, so they just saw it this morning, and that's why they're not here speaking to it today. They would have been here to speak to it, so I wanted to just note that they weren't able to come, but they are obviously very much in support of moving forward with this. Okay, is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this report? Anyone on the line that wishes to speak to this report? All right, a mover and a seconder for the recommendation to receive the report as information, the comments received as part of the public hearing committee meeting, in addition to those already received, be considered in a future recommendation staff report. Moved by Councillor Michelli, seconded by Councillor Brunton. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, 3:43 p.m. A mover for adjournment. Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.